Hey everyone, in this video we're going to go through the betting trends for all 8 games coming up this weekend in the NRL for round number 3. These are going to break down the games. We're going to look at the previous odds when these teams last played each other, who was favorite, who covered the spread, are there any specific trends for these games, and also looking at the totals as well. And the trends are just like one of over 20 different things that you can use to analyze NRL games using the Bet Finder software. If you want more information about that, it's in the link in the description. The first game we're going to look at Thursday night, the grand final rematch, the Melbourne Storm off the bye at home against the Panthers, who are coming off that unexpected loss, I guess you can call it, last week against the Roosters. Melbourne are 8.5 point favorites. They're about $1.30 on the money line, and the total is 45.5. With this game, the Panthers have covered 4 of the past 6 versus Melbourne. Obviously, they won the grand final at the end of last year, 14 points to 6. And this is like a real revenge spot for Melbourne, especially at home. They're off the bye. They have the time to prepare for this game. And in all honesty, they do look really, really hard to beat. One thing I would say to keep in mind is Penrith definitely would have had an eye on this game going into that game last week against the Roosters. I think part of the reason they played so badly is they were already kind of writing that game down as a win and not treating the Roosters as a top 4 side from last year, or top 3 side, I guess, but treating them just off the way they played against the Broncos. And when you take any team in this competition far too lightly, regardless, whether you're the best team or not, it can come back to bite you. That's why there's upsets. That's why we see, unexpected results. It's all about like the mentality or of the team, or it's just how they play in that game when things go wrong. But statistically, aside from them missing a lot of tackles and conceding line breaks, most of Penrith's other metrics were on par with what they normally do. That defensive performance likely is mainly just due to their mindset and effort in approaching that game. But looking back to this game, Melbourne as favourites, they have won 8 of the past 9 versus Penrith at AAMI Park, which gives them a very, very good record and chance to win this game. The past 3 between the two sides, which were all played last year, round 1, 24, and the grand final, were all decided by 8 points or less. In this matchup, 3 of the past 5 head-to-head have gone under. Last time they met in the grand final was a 40.5 total. Last time they met in Melbourne it was a 36.5 total. But we have been seeing quite a lot of games going over. So the betting companies have really increased the odds or increased the total line for a lot of games going forward. So we're going to be seeing much higher numbers on the total points line than we've previously seen for a lot of these games. On to Friday, the Warriors take on the Roosters in New Zealand. Both teams coming off upset wins last week. Right now, the betting companies can't separate them. They're $1.91 a piece. Total is 48.5. The Roosters have a great record against the Warriors, winning the past 8 straight. Last season, they only played 1 game, which the Roosters won 38 points to 18 as 10.5 point favorites at home. Last time they met over in New Zealand was at Mount Smart in round 9, 2023, where the Roosters won 14 points to 0. Between these two sides, there has been a bit of a trend towards it going under the total. So 8 of the past 11 head-to-head have gone under. To be honest, I probably wouldn't buy into that trend much at all. The way these two sides are playing this season, I expect this to be a high-scoring game. Even though, they're playing in New Zealand. Warriors were better defensively last week than they were in week 1. Roosters, both games have been very, very high scoring so far. And kind of with the way the Warriors attack have improved into week 2, if that continues, then this game's going to be high scoring as well. Then we have the Broncos versus the Cowboys in Brisbane. The Broncos big favorites here, minus 16.5, $1.16. Totals 51.5 points. It's not often you see a side coming off a bad defeat last week, then come up almost 3 converted tries favorite for a game. But they do have a very, very good record. They've won and covered the past 4 versus North Queensland. And the past 7 between these two sides have all been blowouts and decided by 12 points or more. They played twice last season in round 4 at Suncorp when it was 38-12 to the Broncos, then 42-18 up in North Queensland. This was a game where the Cowboys got off to a good start and then the Broncos overran them. Between these two sides as well, 9 of the past 10 head-to-head have gone over the total points line, including the past 7. Last time they met, it was a 52.5 point total, slightly down to 51.5. But last time they met in Brisbane, it was only a 42.5 number. So as you can see, like a lot of these totals are a lot higher than previously what we've seen. But as it currently stands, still the majority of games are going over the numbers, and those numbers are just going to keep on creeping up until it starts going the opposite way and games start to go under. You'd expect Brisbane to win this game. Cowboys' attack has been really, really poor in both games so far. And if the Broncos can't break down their defensive, the Cowboys' defense, then there's going to be a lot of issues for that team moving forward. With the Broncos, now very good in week 1, terrible in week 2. This game will give us a much better indication on where they're completely at. You can't make a full judgment of those 2 games. I think the Broncos will bring more effort, intensity in what is like a rivalry game for them, which should be enough to get them over the line. But at $1.16, that's very, very short. But all signs point to them winning and should win fairly comfortably with the Cowboys' issues on both sides of the ball. Then we have the Sharks versus Rabbitohs. Sharks, another team who is a big favorite this weekend. $1.20 minus 14.5. Total is 48.5. The Rabbitohs are 2-0 so far this season, but they're paying $4.60. The Sharks, who are now 1-1, paying $1.20. The Sharks should be winning this game. They've won and covered the past 3 versus South Sydney and scored 20 plus in each of those past 3 games. Last time they met in round 22, the Sharks were 9.5 point favorites and won 20 points to 6. Prior to that, they won by 12, 34 to 22 as 10.5 point favorites. So slightly bigger line than we've seen in previous matches. Total for this game at 48.5 is slightly lower than the last time they met when it was 51.5. Sharks, this is their first home game of the season, and I think they'll put in a winning performance at home in front of their home fans. From a total perspective, I'd lean slightly towards the over, but would feel more confident on playing the Sharks as a side. The Rabbitohs, they ground out a close win in their opening game against the Dolphins and made a come from behind win against the Dragons, which we spoke about in the review of round number 2. This is definitely by far the toughest opposition they've faced, and I don't think they're going to be good enough to get over the line. Dolphins versus Tigers. Both sides $1.91, so another one of these games where the bookies can't split them. Interestingly, for this game, the Dolphins come in with 3 days extra rest as they played on the Thursday and the Tigers played on the Sunday in round number 2. And also the Dolphins get to be at home. So 2 major positives there for Redcliffe. Between these 2 sides, Redcliffe has covered the spread in all 3. They've won the past 2. Tigers won the first meeting back in round 23, 24 points to 23, so a 1-point win. But the past 2 Dolphins have been the more dominant side. Had this game there not been so many advantages for the Dolphins, then I'd be more confident backing West Tigers. As it stands, I would still lean to them. At the current prices, I think Tigers are a really good chance of stringing together back-to-back wins. You could look through their record last year. Whenever they won a game, they won the following game after that. And so this fits that similar criteria, and it's definitely a winnable game. I just don't love the situational factor of the rest disadvantage and travel coming in. But Dolphins have had to play 2 games down in New South Wales due to the weather and whatnot. So they're now back at home in their first game up there. I don't think there's going to be a great deal between these 2 sides, but I do like the Tigers to get over the line. They really got their attack going last week against the Eels. Dolphins are a better defensive side, but so it's going to be interesting to see, how they can fully go against them. But I think Tigers will get over the line in a tricky road matchup for them. Then we have the Titans versus Knights. For this game, Newcastle are small favorites at $1.70, minus 2.5 and a 50.5 point total. Between these 2 sides, 4 of the past 5 head-to-head have gone over. So it's been a history of high-scoring games. This is a test for the Titans in terms of their attack. They played the Bulldogs last week, scored 24 points, and the Knights are a very similar ranked, slightly worse, but very similar ranked defensive side and have been very good this year. So at home, can the Titans find enough points to win this game? The benefit and the thing they have in their favor is they've covered the past 9 at home versus Newcastle, and just overall in this matchup, the home team has covered 17 of the past 18 and won 13 of the past 14. So I think an average better looking at this game would see the Knights $1.70, and they're 2-0, been pretty impressive in both games. Titans were average to below average in their game against the Bulldogs. It instantly looks like all the values with the Knights here, but when you factor in that home record, I think that's really what's keeping the market a bit tighter on this game. Newcastle, though, have won 4 of the past 6, but only one of those has been on the road, and they played that game at Suncorp. This game obviously being played on the Gold Coast. From what we've seen of these two sides so far, I'd be leaning towards Newcastle to get the win, though, but without a great deal of confidence. From a total perspective, with 4 of the past 5 head-to-head going over, and the one that went under was in round 26 last year with a 52.5 point total, and they scored 50 points combined. I think they will get pretty close to this number of the 50.5. Slight lean towards the over, but it's not a game where I have a great deal of confidence because a lot of the factors don't really line up to create a confident bet. First game on Sunday, the Eels against the Bulldogs. Bulldogs $1.45 favorites here. Total is 46.5. 16 of the past 19 head-to-head between these two sides have gone under the total. And last time they met, it was 46.5, so we've got the exact same number. They scored 40 points in that game with the Bulldogs running out 4-point winners as underdogs. Obviously, now the Bulldogs are favorite. I should have gone through and had a look when was the last time the Bulldogs were actually favorite against Parramatta? Because this is probably like the first time in a good 5 to 6 years. The benefits for the Eels, though, is the home team has won and covered 6 of the past 7, and the Eels have won and covered 4 of the past 5 versus the Bulldogs. For this game, though, the Bulldogs, as these teams are tracking right now, are clearly and by far the better side, and this will be a game that they definitely expect to win. 7 of the past 8 head-to-head have been decided by 18 points, so historically, this matchup has tended to be a blowout most of the time in favor of Parramatta wins. So don't just look at that stat and be like, oh, well, Bulldogs are going to win by 18 plus. They won last time by 4, but all those other 18 plus wins, most part, have been by the Eels. But I do think the Bulldogs get over the line. They should be able to limit the Eels scoring enough to win this game if they play how they have been playing in the opening weeks, especially if the Eels play how they've been playing in the opening couple of rounds. Then final game of the round, the Seagulls against the Canberra Raiders. Manly are $1.54 favourites coming off their loss against the Warriors. Raiders, who beat the Broncos, now 2-0 at $2.50. Manly, 5.5 point favourites. Total is 49.5. The past 4 between these two sides have gone over the total. This is 1 point higher than their last meeting when the total is 48.5. Manly have a very good record. They've won 7 of the past 10 versus Canberra. Their past 4 matchups have all exceeded the 50-point mark, which would put it over this number as well. So definitely am interested in this game being high scoring to close out the round. Seagulls weren't at their best last week versus the Warriors, but defensively weren't great. And, the Raiders still conceded 22 points against the Broncos, who were poor in attack. So I like this game to be going over to close out the round. And those are my early thoughts for round number 3. I'll be posting a full betting preview, going through all my best bets, everything I'm betting, full breakdowns of the games with the bet finders and statistics in the NRL Best Bets membership. That's where you also get access to all the tools and everything I use to make a full-time income betting on sports. I'll put the link to that in the description if you want to follow along. Right now, we have a 12-8 record so far this NRL season. It's been a process of getting through the opening rounds, trying to avoid the massive changes in teams' form as we build through the first couple of rounds to then get a clearer picture of where these sides are at and then to capitalize. So definitely check that out if you're betting on the NRL each week and you actually want to profit. And the try scorer preview, where I'll go through every player I have shortlisted to score a try this weekend, that'll be coming out in the next couple of days, so stay tuned for that. Thanks guys for watching. Hope you're having a great week.